Keith Int, Giajuich, and Kumusta. Hey, it's Tom from Green Shorts, and today I'm going to demo a competitor's rocket stove, and it's one that I suspect has stolen my design. So I picked one up on Amazon, and let's see how it compares. And actually there's a second reason why I'm showing you this product, in that it may be a suitable replacement for mine. I'm actually not making these anymore. The sheet metal is just too expensive. And this may be an option that I want to recommend to you, but I want to make sure first that it performs well. Let's open this up. I'm also going to try and do this with a sprained thumb. Had a little mishap in a soccer game last night. They went with the long end opening of the bag. I like that. You know what's interesting is I was kick-starting my rocket stove. A friend of mine found a replica of it on Amazon. Not this company, at least not this name. I was blown away that it had been replicated so quickly. And that's part of the reason I did not do a patent. I just feel like there are plenty of people in this world who do not respect intellectual property, and for me to spend the money to patent and then the money to defend the patent just didn't seem worth it. All these pieces are wrapped separately. That's interesting. Keeps them from getting scratched. There is a nice brushed finish on this. One of the challenges I had with my stoves is that there were micro scratches on all the panels, and so I actually had to have them sandblasted. They've got two extra parts in their design, which are actually a pot standoff for the top of the stove. Let's put this thing together. Fits together pretty nicely. The gauge on this stainless is pretty nice. The finish is nice and even. And clearly they've made a few modifications to my design, but let me tell you why I think it's mine. Here's the production version of the Rocket King. It's a little bit taller, but this design has modifications that were made after my prototype. And here is the prototype. You can definitely tell by the shape of the fins, the way the notching comes together, the way that the floor drops down into the edges of the fire opening here. Even though mine was a circle, they've made this into a bit of a trapezoid. And the way the floor sticks through the back of the stove. Although they eliminated the hole in the back, I've got a hole back here that lets you stake it to the ground. One of the things I realized about this prototype is that these notches didn't provide enough airflow. So on my production version, I deepened those notches. They actually solved the airflow issue with these two additional parts, which sit in the top here, and they provide hot standoffs and extra airflow. The deeper notches idea came from someone who actually had bought my plans and had suggested that modification. He was a machinist. When he built his, he had made deeper notches and they worked better for him. So just give him some credit for that. The reason I did it this way is because I wanted it to have as few parts as possible. To get this laser cut, I'm paying for the sheet metal plus the cost to laser per inch of cut. So the less parts I'm cutting, the better. Now I'm saying that they stole this design, but that's really kind of clickbait because I actually sell the plans for this. So realistically, anybody could make it. Now I didn't envision someone making it and selling it on Amazon. One of the reasons I am not producing this stove anymore, in addition to the cost being too high for what I would want to sell it for, I also want to encourage you to make it yourself. I do sell the plans for this stove on my website. Put a link in the description below and right here in a card as well. The metal that I bought to make this first prototype cost me $5. The gear top stove sells on Amazon for $27, and that's less than I can even cut it for. To make something like this, you would need a drill and a jigsaw, and maybe a grinder would work as well, and a couple of hours. It's not a hard stove to make, although I have the plans updated to have these deeper notches, so you'd get the proper airflow without having to do the additional pot standoffs like this. But I also know that not everybody out there wants to make one, and I understand that. So I want to test out the gear top stove today. Before I recommend it, I want to make sure it performs well. Alright, let's light this thing up. I will say the notches are a little tight there. The fire floor here, the lines are going in parallel with how the firewood would go in here. So potentially stuff could fall down in there. Compared to my fire floor, which has a perpendicular grate which prevents wood from falling in. Although I do like the fact that they went ahead and did a grill that fills that space. Alright, I'm going to prepare some firewood here, sticks and twigs. Will burn fast. That ought to do it. I'm not cooking anything. I got the stove up on a block of aircrete to insulate my wooden table here. The idea of the extended fuel floor is to support the fuel as it sticks out of the stove a little bit. As it burns down, you kind of push it in. And then we elevate the fuel, of course, to get airflow in underneath, which is pulled in by the column of hot air rising up through the combustion zone of the stove. This part of the stove closes off from the air. Basically, no additional air comes in from any of the sides. That lets the fire, the oxygen chemical reaction happen a little bit more. It's not a complete combustion, but the extra oxygen coming in lets us consume as much of that fuel as possible, and that's what makes a rocket stove work. The turbulence of the air coming in making that rocketing sound, which is how a rocket stove gets its name. You can also see how the fire is already starting to pull flames backwards as the draft is going in and up. A nice combustion going here. I'm going to throw my pot on. There might be too much air gap there, although the fire's hitting the bottom of the pot, and that's what I tend to look for with the stove performance. But one thing you could do is to cut these notches a little deeper, and then you wouldn't have to use these pot standoffs. One downside to this design is that their fuel shelf is a little more narrow. Mine went as wide as the stove itself just to keep the fuel from falling off the sides, especially the little pieces that burn off. Not a deal breaker, I'd say. Alright, let me keep this fire going. Alright, the stove is actually warping a little bit, and I've seen mine do that as well, although maybe not quite as wide as that gap. Perhaps the type of stainless that they used here isn't as high quality. I know there are different grades. One modification to the design I'm not thrilled with is that they cut arches in the bottom of each side. They did that to probably increase airflow into the stove, but it does make it susceptible to side winds. You can see here ash kind of piling up on the side and the back. That could be potentially dangerous if you have coals falling out the side and igniting something. I much prefer to have airflow just coming in from the front. And with that little bit of wood that I had, I'm getting a boil. So is this a suitable alternative to the Rocket King? I'd say yes. And certainly for 27 bucks, I think it's definitely worth that. It does make me a little sad that someone took my design and ran with it. But I'm also glad that I have an option that I can recommend to you. So for those of you who don't want to buy the plans and make it yourself, the Gear Top Rocket King on Amazon would be an option. I'll put a link to that in the description below, and you can find some joy in knowing that I get a little piece of that action if you buy it there. There are a few more of my Rocket King Micros, which are the smaller version of the Rocket King. That's all that I have left. I think there are 10 left right now on Amazon. I'll put a link to that in the description below. It is almost twice as much as this, but it's one that I made and packaged myself. And it's made in America, if that's something that's important to you. As always, my mission here at Green Shorts is to help you see green so you can be green, and save a little green by doing it yourself. A rocket stove is green because it uses small sticks and twigs, found fuel, and burns them efficiently. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Saturday. Actually, I won't see you next Saturday because I'm on an assignment. Maybe I'll do a vlog or a live stream from where I am. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching.